You know, I truly have to ask myself if Valve actually played Deadlock. I want to say yes, that it's crazy to assume that a game's developers don't actually play the game to make sure their changes are good, but I've played these games before. I played Dead by Daylight, and I know what it feels like to read patch notes written by devs who don't play the game or listen to their player base. I actually don't know if they have fun in the metas that they make, because not a single person that I've spoken to about this has disagreed with me so far. The topic in question being the fact that Deadlock is simply not as fun as before. Of course, I know that gamers will always optimize the fun out of any game, but with how often we get balance updates, I do think that the ever-shifting meta should be able to make up for this fallacy. I mean, that is quite literally the premise of every live service game of all time. Lash is the antithesis of what makes Lash fun to play. It's objectively the most meta way to play him right now, as I understand it, but it's so boring. The main draw of playing a hero like Lash is being different than the gun carry heroes, because if I wanted to play something like Lash, I would simply be playing Infernus with superior stamina or something. That being said, Lash is the title of the video, but not truly the topic. We'll get back to him in a moment, but the true topic is Deadlock's balancing philosophy. It seems like they've made the wrong turn at every crossroad since the New Blood update released. Every change seems to be in pursuit of making the game more accessible to new players. They removed the skill floor for IAD parries, they made short hops easier to execute, and most egregiously, the rework patch. I talked about this last time briefly, but I want to dive into talking about the patch this video, because that was a couple months ago and it's still affecting the game for the worse. The patch is such a slimy piece of shit that I don't even know where to begin. It feels like every hero now has to do a little bit of everything. No hero can be bad at something. It feels like we're catering to one-tricks in a game that literally does not allow you to one-trick because of the way that matchmaking is set up. What I find most frustrating about these changes is how unable I am to properly communicate to you the general problem. I mean, I'm doing my best here, but the issue is so systematic that they'd have to walk back several patches to fix the one gnawing at the heart of the game here. If you started after or during the New Blood patch, you might not have a clue what I'm even talking about. You might be saying, Fighterjet, what the hell are you talking about? I literally can't imagine the game when it wasn't the way that it was now, which is the problem. I mean, not you specifically, but the fact that the game is so fundamentally different than the game that I enjoyed so much that I dedicated hours of my life to making these videos for. And that's fine, really. Not every game is for everyone. Not everything needs to be changed in such a way that it's designed that it only fits my interests. I get that. But my gripe is the fact that I honestly haven't met someone who thinks that the game is more fun now than before. Holiday Mains, I'm sure, can attest to this because she hasn't been playable for a while. Let me talk about the topic of the video. I mean, the guy I mentioned in the title. Lash. Jacob fucking Lash. My favorite hero in the game by a long shot. I haven't played him in a while. Like, genuinely, I don't think I've touched him since the last video I made on him. And lo and behold, Lash is the meta that I return to him on. Let me clarify my issue. I've always hated the fact that QSR is a Lash item. I mean, first of all, the fire rate buff that it grants has always only been a third of as useful on burst fire heroes like Lash as anyone else because Deadlock calculates fire rate on burst fire heroes in the most psychotic way imaginable. So naturally, it would make more sense for an item like QSR that buffs fire rate to not be as good as some alternatives. Maybe if you're using an off-meta build, it should still be viable, but not the main thing that he buys. In other words, the gutting of Coldfront affected the way to play my favorite hero the most, because now QSR is just the objectively better tier 2 item to complete your purple spike. Even when Coldfront was viable on Lash, QSR was a popular alternative, which was fine to me because it was a playstyle difference. I never found the need to use Flawed or healing as often. It was kind of a skill issue thing in my opinion. If your movement was good enough to not need the extra QSR spirit power healing, then you could buy Coldfront, or maybe rush Tank Buster. Anyway, my point is, and always has been, that the most fun and interesting way to play Lash has always been to play around your ground strike. It's the entire reason why he's always felt different from the rest of the cast, because playing Lash felt like playing a different game. And then it got nerfed 5 times in a row. In fact, I don't even consider this a nerf, but the lowering of the height ceiling in the game is so miserable to play this hero. I mean, you can reach the height ceiling by just jumping as any hero in the game on top of the buff tower bridges. Yes, we got Flawed buffs for concession, but I've already made a video on why that sucks so much. I'm also further bewildered by the current Lash meta because we've seen this before. That's right, we've seen this exact same thing happen. We all said, wow, this is terrible, and they removed the level 3 grapple ability that made it so powerful. which they added back to Lash. I truly don't know what they thought was going to happen. Did they think we would just play nice this time? In a time when hybrid is at its strongest? I guess what I'm trying to get at is that they genuinely just aren't thinking about the changes that they make in the grand scheme of things, or at least it doesn't feel that way. It feels like they looked at someone like Doorman, who has an abysmal dogshit win rate if I recall correctly, and said, hey, this guy clearly needs a buff, let's make it so people can use his ultimate every 13 seconds, without considering any other issue with the game currently. Maybe if we nerfed the absolute debuff overload meta that was and still currently is in the game, Doorman's ultimate, which is the hardest CC in the game, will proportionally get stronger. This is why I genuinely believe they don't play the game, because the only changes they make are changes no one asked for. Because they refuse to nerf things that are frustrating to play against, because buffing bad heroes is always better than nerfing good ones, which, by the way, is the exact philosophy that caused Marvel Rivals balancing to go down the toilet. Well, that and the fact that the game was never properly balanced in the first place in the pursuit of standing out from Overwatch, who, by the way, now has comparable numbers to Marvel Rivals. In other words, it didn't go well for them. I even talked about that before. Although most of it is a rant on how they don't understand how to balance Thor properly, but I digress. Here's my proposition for Deadlock. Take a hero as your baseline and balance everything relative to that hero's strength. This puts every balance change into perspective and gives you a good idea on what power distribution in a hero's kit should look like. Ideally, the hero in question should have a kit in which all 4 of their abilities have evenly distributed power, but it's not a requirement. My proposal for this hero is Warden, the most B-tier hero in the game's history. His Flask, Paige, and Ultimate are all solid abilities that can feel strong in the right hands or build, but none feel broken or overpowered. His barrier is honestly kind of undertuned. Yes, it gives debuff resist, but it doesn't work retroactively and is only applied for 4 seconds, so it's honestly a really useless stat. If this proposal sounds familiar to you, it shouldn't, because 90% of people do not follow multiverses. That's right, the balancing philosophy comes from maybe the worst platform fighter of all time. But you know what? Their balancing was fine. I genuinely felt that most heroes in that game could be played. The few tournaments they had did have a lot of variance in the characters that were picked, meaning the game was balanced well enough to support just playing your favorite character rather than the most meta ones. Also, apparently Leviathan, the Multiverses pro, is now a diehard Paradox main, so that's cool. There's actually more to talk about, but the rant about items and the death of off-meta builds is so long that it's gotta be its own thing. That and this one's already gone on for like 8 minutes, which is longer than I try to make most of my stuff, even if my recent postings seem to contradict that. So with that being said, my name is FighterJet, and thank you for watching.